You know something I just realized? I really need a blue screen. So the latest Japanese trading card game expansion for Pokemon has been released. It's actually two sets, Blue Shock and Red Flash. And, well, basically them combined make up our breakthrough set in English. It comes out on November 4, and the cards will be legal to play in sanctioned tournaments beginning 21 days later on November 25. So in the meantime, we have all of these cards, and it's very unlikely that our English set will be much different. If there's anything, there will be maybe 2 or 3 editions from little promos that have been released in Japan that the Pokemon Company International thinks deserve to be released in an actual set in English. So let's go ahead and start looking at all of these. I'm not going to go on every single one, just because I think that not everything is worth pointing out. I mean, look at this Paris, for example. It has one attack, Blot, that does 10 and heals 10. That's not that big of a deal. I'm going to be focusing, much like my Ancient Origins review, on the cards that I think have anywhere from the tiniest bit of potential to the ones that are so obviously full of potential that you'd have to be blind not to see it. I want to put a disclaimer at the front of this that I don't work for Pokemon or anything like that. I'm not that huge of a competitive player. I know how to play. I just choose to collect rather than competitively play in the trading card game. So if I miss a card or two that you guys think should be here as something that needs to be discussed, please feel free to say in the comments below that you think that this card is worth looking into, at least as a potential for some decks. And I'm just going to move my middle scroll wheel on my mouse because I can. And I'm not human. I know most of these from memory. Are the ones that I want to talk about, but if I miss one, I'm sorry. Or if I start reading one and then realize that it's actually not that good, then I'm also sorry about that. It's hard to keep track of all these cards. There's so many in these sets, it's not even funny. The sets, like I said, are split in Japan between one called Blue Shock and one called Red Flash. Now, I'm getting these images from Bulbapedia. I would have used PokeBeach, but they've implemented a new system where you have to actually click on the name of the card to show the picture, instead of just showing the picture with the card translation, which is what Bulbapedia has done this time around at least, and thus it's just visually much better for you guys. So I'm just going to go ahead and start going down and looking at the first ones that I think have any kind of potential, and that would be this Parasect from Red Flash. It has the colorful Spore attack for one colorless. It doesn't deal any damage to your opponent's Pokemon, but choose up to 3 of your Pokemon, search your deck for up to 3 different types of basic energy cards, and attach 1 to each of the Pokemon you chose. Shuffle your deck afterward. It also has the X Scissor, does 30, and then flip a coin if heads it does 30 more. But the colorful Spore has the tiniest bit of potential. It could really help with energy acceleration. The problem is you need 3 different types of basic energy cards. You can't just say, okay, I have 3 grass Pokemon on my bench. I want to attach 3 grass energy, 1 to each of them. It needs to be different colored energy. This could work well with maybe the Vivillon from X and Y base. That was the most horrible deck I've ever seen. Even Puka from the Top Cut could not make it work, so I don't see that ever happening, but just know that this does exist in case a card comes out in a future set that this can support. There's really not much else to look into for quite a while. We do have this Simisage, which has Fire Toss. For one colorless, you just put 3 fire energy from your discard pile into your hand. We have a lot of fire acceleration right now thanks to all the cards that were printed in Flash Fire, which is still in the standard and expanded formats. But, you know, if you need one more fire accelerator, this might help a little bit. Then Hand Sling does 10 times the number of cards in your hand. That could be pretty good. Seismitoad is not as big of a threat as it was in the last format when it was boundaries crossed and on, but it still exists, and Seismitoad is weak to grass. If you find yourself in a situation where you're item locked, you can throw this Pokemon to the active position, and for a double colorless energy, does 10 times the number of cards in your hand. That means if you have 8 cards in your hand, you're doing 160, plus a Muscle Band, you're knocking out that Seismitoad. So if you're stuck in an item lock position, just know Simisage is probably a good way to counter Seismitoad, although we do still have other things that were in the last set that are doing a much better job at that. The next thing to look at is this Chestnut Hollow. It has a Spike Lariat attack, which does 60, and if your opponent's active Pokemon already has damage counters on it, it does another 60. So this is going to do 120, and then Diamond Press does 100. During your opponent's next turn, any damage done to its Pokemon by attacks is reduced by 20. That doesn't seem too good. I mean, the first attack costs 3 energy, the second attack costs 4. We already have ways to accelerate Grass Energy, and there are ways to get Chestnut into play first turn, thanks to the Forest of Giant Plants Stadium from Ancient Origins. So this does have some potential, but it's this card, this next card, that is down here without an image, but I had the foresight to load up in a separate window, as you can see up there. This is Chestnut Break, and we actually already have the English card for this. That's amazing, isn't it? So we have Chestnut Break, and I just realized that the Raichu Break half deck is coming out in Japan, and that will probably be in our English set as well, so I completely forgot to include that. I'll probably tack that on at the end of the video, and if I forget to, I apologize. But anyway, so the way Break Evolution works is, from the sounds of it, I believe this is the case that you still have to wait a turn to evolve the Pokemon as normal. You put this over the art of the previous card, that being this Chestnut here, and this includes all of the weaknesses, resistances, retreat costs, attacks, and abilities of the previous evolution. That means that this is basically a level X. You put this on top and you get everything that was on the previous evolution, and you also get an extra attack and a boosted HP. 190 HP is nothing to complain about. Tough Hammer does 160. This Pokemon does 30 damage to itself. This attack does 30 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. Now, 160 with the Muscle Band, that knocks out almost everything. With the Forest of Giant Plants, you're able to set this thing up turn 1. Without it, this is in essence a stage 3, which we have never had before in the trading card game. But, you know, it's there. It has potential. It's gold, and it apparently has the same pull rate as an EX. So, yeah. Just pointing out that it is there. Same with this regular Chestnut. We'll see how much it is used. The next thing I wanted to look at is this Vivillon with the Energy Color ability. Once during your turn, flip a coin. If heads, search your deck for a basic energy card and attach it to one of your Pokemon and shuffle your deck afterwards. This works even if Vivillon is on the bench, and it stacks. You can use this more than once a turn if you have multiple Vivillon in play, which means you have a 50-50 chance just randomly during your turn, as long as this is in play, to get a free energy into play. That is actually pretty huge. And of course, it does have the downside that it's stage 2, so you have to evolve it twice. Once again, there's the Forest of Giant Plants, Rare Candy is a thing, all sorts of things. This Vivillon with Energy Color, I can actually see getting a lot of play. We'll see if it actually does, especially since... that's weird. Okay, Bulbapedia, you have an error on your page. It says that this Vivillon has 60 hit points. No, it has 120. that caught me off guard. I was going to say, especially since it has 60 HP, but no, there's no way it can. It's a stage 2. And Sleep Powder does 60. Your opponent's active Pokemon is now asleep. Not too bad, but it does have 3 energy cost. This Go-Goat and does 10, 30 to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. Bench damage is pretty darn good. Hornleech does 90, heals 30. I don't think that Go-Goat will see too much play, though. We're getting into our first EX that we're going to look at, this Houndoom EX, and I'm sorry that that picture just isn't the best, but oh well. this Houndoom EX has Hornmelt. For 1 fire energy, discard the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck. Now, this is a pretty old strategy, decking your opponent out. It's the big draw of the Wailord deck that placed second at the United States Nationals last year. It was a huge tactic for the Durant deck that was around when not Next Destiny's Noble Victories came out. Decking out has not been so big of a strategy since Lysander's Trump card came out, but since that's banned, people are really trying to build decks around that strategy. It is a legitimate strategy to deck your opponent out. The big problem is you can Hornmelt, but you don't deal any damage. You discard top 2 cards of your opponent's deck. If your opponent, say, has a Bunnelby from whatever that set is that it came out in, oh man, they're all melting together. This is embarrassing. The one before Emerald Break, not Emerald Break, Roaring Skies, one before Roaring Skies was not Ancient Origins. I can't remember. Bunnelby has the Burrow attack, and it has the other attack that makes you take a card from discard pile and shuffle it back into your deck. So Bunnelby is the perfect counter for this Houndoom EX. Houndoom EX also has the Grand Flame attack, does 50 for 2 energy, and attach a fire energy from your discard pile to one of your bench Pokemon. This is great for energy acceleration, on top of all the fire energy acceleration we have from Flash Fire, and this is going to be a big counter to some of those Grass-type Pokemon that made their big appearance in Ancient Origins, like Mega Sceptile or Vespiquen. On top of that, we have our Mega Houndoom EX with Inferno Fang. It does 80, and you may choose to discard all fire energy attached to this Pokemon, and if you do, it does 80 more damage. So this thing, for only 2 energy, can potentially deal out 160 damage. If you throw on a Muscle Band, somehow you're dealing 180, which knocks out most everything outside of EXs and Break Pokemon. I mean, you'd have to put the Muscle Band on, which means you're probably going to have a hard time doing that and Mega Evolving in the same turn. But there are ways to make it happen. I think Mega Houndoom and Houndoom have a lot of potential, and I'm looking forward to seeing if they're played a lot. We have this Typhlosion over here. Beautiful Typhlosion. First one printed since before Black and White. Think about that. Call of Legends. It has the attack Massive Eruption. Discard the top 5 cards of your deck. This attack does 80 times the number of energy cards you discarded. No doubt Typhlosion will be a huge card during the Breakthrough pre-release because it only takes 1 energy. That means you can maybe run a 1-1-1 line of Cyndaquil, Quilava, and Typhlosion, and then once you get the Typhlosion in play, you can just use Massive Eruption over and over and over again, and that's going to be 80 times 5 every single guaranteed time because you need to evolve from Cyndaquil to Quilava and then Quilava to Typhlosion. So you're going to be doing 300 damage every single time. That's going to be huge for pre-release. In practice, maybe not so much. I could see it maybe having some potential, but we're just going to have to see. When it comes down to it, it's a Stage 2, and Stage 2s just really, really struggle. That's just the way, unfortunately, that it is. We also have Flare Destroy, does 130 for 3. Discard an energy attached to this Pokemon, and discard an energy card attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. Now, discarding your opponent's energy is a really big deal. Enhanced Hammer and Crushing Hammer, there are decks built around those 2 cards just to make sure that your opponent can never get energy into play so they can never attack. You know, we had a deck called Hammer Time back before, it was like in the 2012 to 2013 season, 2013-14, whatever it was. It revolved around just recycling those hammers so that whenever your opponent put energy into play, they could never keep them for enough turns to make them useful. It was especially big when paired with things like Sableye with the Junk Hunt attack and things like that. So Flare Destroy, if you can get rid of an energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon, on top of playing things like Enhanced Hammer and Crushing Hammer, which are both still in format, then maybe you can make a good deck around Typhlosion. We'll have to see. I'd like to see if anyone can come up with that. It might be a Bad Deck Monday idea if Puka still did that. But oh well. We got the Simisear over here. Put 3 water energy from your discard pile into your hand. This is, I'm going to guess that Simipour does grass energy. Whenever the monkeys come out, they always have this way of mimicking each other in a very annoying way. But in all these cases, I don't think that it has that big of potential, but it is still there in case you guys need to get 3 water energy out of your discard pile for whatever reason. The next card I want to look at is this Octillery. It has the Abyss Hand ability. Once during your turn, you may draw cards until you have 5 cards in your hand. Now, this is extremely similar to the Electrode that was in Plasma Freeze, that had a very similar ability that let you draw until you had 4 in your hand. I believe its ability was called Magnetic Draw. So this works, and you may draw until you have 5 in your hand. Now, 1 extra card may not seem like much of a difference, but people are more willing to tech one of these in their deck if it means being able to draw up to 5 cards instead of up to 4. Because for some reason, that 1 extra card really does make the difference. And it's not just people's preference. This is actually because it works a lot, and it works really well. It has the Hug attack. I love that attack name. Does 40 and the defending Pokemon can't retreat during your opponent's next turn. It's not going to be a big of a deal. We have things like Switch and Escape Rope, things that are really, really big. What you're going to be running this Octillery for is solely for the Abyss Hand ability. I can see people teching it into all sorts of decks, and I think that on a scale of 1 to 10, this might see a 4 or a 5 in terms of being teched into decks, and maybe a 2 or 3 in terms of being seen in decks overall. We have our next EXs over here. We have this Glalie EX. Has the Ice Breath attack. Flip a coin. If heads, your opponent's active Pokemon is now paralyzed. Sounds great. When it's paralyzed, it can't retreat, can't attack, can't do much of anything. And it can't get out of it unless it's taken out the active spot. But like I said before with Octillery, we have Switch and Escape Rope to get out of that kind of thing. We also have Super Scoop Up and AZ. A lot of people are running those for the sole reason of being able to pick up Pokemon just because they need to every now and then. Especially with decks that run Shaymin EX. So, Paralyze, not that big of a deal. Especially since you can't deal any damage when you do it. Instant Cooling does 50, and if you have the same number of cards in your hand as your opponent, it does 100 more damage. Now, that seems like it's a bit of a chance to take it. I'd like to say that there is a card, it might have even been in this very set, that allowed for you to match hands with your opponent in terms of number of cards. I forget if it actually does exist. I know that there was a card in the HGSS days that did, but I can't remember right now, and I apologize, that's my fault for being ignorant on that matter. But I believe it exists. It might even be further down on this list. I just don't want to risk scrolling down, turn out I'm wrong, and wasting a few minutes of your time. If that card does exist, and I think it does, then you play that card, then use Instant Cooling, you're guaranteed to do 150 damage. You throw on a Muscle Band, 170, which knocks out most things. But the thing that makes this thing impressive is its Mega Evolution, Mega Glalie EX. It has 220 HP, and Cryo Mouth does 100, and if this Pokemon has 10 or more damage counters on it, it does 150 more damage. So this does 250 if it has 100 damage on it. And I don't know if you noticed, but it's really hard to knock out a 220 HP Pokemon in one hit. The odds of this thing getting into play and then your opponent not being able to knock it out in one hit, having to just settle with maybe doing half, means that if you get the Cryo Mouth attack set up, you're going to be doing 250 damage, which knocks out every single thing. The thing with the biggest HP is Wailord EX, and it has 250. This thing will just knock it out in one hit like it's no big deal. So it might take a little bit of setting up. I mean, your opponent, if they see this Glalie hit the field, they're going to think smart, maybe Lysander around it to try and make sure that they never actually damage it, or they could try and make sure that they only deal 90 damage and then follow up the next turn with 130 or more to knock it out. Your opponent has ways to counter this strategy, but if they don't have a way, then just know Cryo Mouth will one-shot literally everything. And thus, it is not a bad choice. This is probably one of the scariest cards that I've seen in recent memory, just because the thought of your opponent just staring this thing down and knowing that no matter what they do, they're screwed. Okay, we have this Starmie, which has Deep Sea Swirl, doesn't deal damage. Shuffle your hand into your deck, then draw 7 cards. It'd be great if this thing worked first turn, but then you'd need to evolve into a first turn anyway, so it doesn't matter. And Even Bind does 30, and if you and your opponent have the same number of bench Pokemon, your opponent's active Pokemon is now paralyzed. Doesn't seem like too big of a deal, but the draw support is there, and the Even Bind is there, even though I've already mentioned so many counters to paralysis. Starmie exists, that's all you need to know. And it looks like I was right about Panpour. Put 3 Grass Energy from your discard pile into your hand. Alright. Let's see. Up next is this Empoleon with the ability Noble Channeler. As long as this Pokemon is in play, your basic Pokemon's attacks do 20 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. So, all basic Pokemon, that includes EXs, now deal 20 extra damage. That is incredibly good. So just putting this on your bench means that Glalie EX up there, which normally can max out at 150 HP or damage, now suddenly gets an extra 20 thanks to Empoleon's Noble Channeler ability. And it works really well since they're both water types. And its attack is Hydro Splash, does 70, no secondary effects. So I can see Noble Channeler being teched into some decks. We have the big problem that it is a Stage 2, but it works really well with Archie's Ace in the Hole, which came out in, dang, I really can't remember, this is driving me bonkers. That set that this came out in, that the original set that Kyogre and Groudon came out, this is driving me nuts. But Archie's Ace in the Hole does exist. We saw it work to win the Pokemon World Championships in 90 seconds, quite literally. So you can put this onto your bench, no problem. Get a Noble Channeler into play. Voila, extra 20 for all basics. Not bad. We have this Vanillux. Shivering Breath does 30, and each player cannot play any supporter or stadium cards from his or her hand. Now, we've seen supporter blocking in the past with the Executor, I believe, from Furious Fists. I could be wrong, but I think it was from Furious Fists. Or, I'm just going to go with Furious Fists. It had the attack called either Barrage or Blockade, but I think it was Barrage. I'm so sorry that I can't remember off the top of my head. But Executor had an attack that prevented your opponent from playing supporter cards. And at the time when it was printed, everyone's like, that's not a big deal. You can work around not using supporters. But at the time, people were so focused on trying to work around Seismitoad, which blocked items, that they ran supporter-heavy decks. A few people in regionals with that Executor just brought it in knowing their opponents were going to be running tons and tons of supporters and stadiums and very few item cards, that they just ran the Executor and had it use its attack, dealt 10 damage at a time, but their opponent could never play any supporter cards. And it got pretty high rankings in a lot of regionals just because it was that good, blocking off supporters. This thing doesn't, and it deals 30 damage. Again, problem with it being Stage 2, you can get around that with Archie's Ace in the Hole or Rare Candy, whatever. And on top of blocking stadiums, it also blocks supporter cards. And, you know what I mean. And on top of blocking supporters, it blocks stadiums. Now, we've seen stadium blockage as well. A Ninetales that I believe was printed in that same dang set. This is going to drive me bonkers. Forget it. XY5. Ninetales was printed in that set, or was it? Yeah, it was printed in Roaring Skies, never mind. That made it so that when it was in play, neither player could play stadiums from his or her hand. And that proved to be pretty good for things like the Rayquaza decks that needed the Skyfield in play at all times. You play Rayquaza, then you play a Ninetales on the bench to lock the Skyfield into play. After you play the Skyfield, of course. The thing with this is that it also blocks you from playing Stadium and supporter cards during your turn. That is going to be the big drawback, but we'll see if this sees play. I think it actually might. And then Deep Frozen does 70. Flip a coin. If heads, your opponent's active Pokemon is now confused. If tails, your opponent's active Pokemon... Heads, paralyzed, tails, confused. Okay, I don't know what's wrong with my reading right now. But, so, tail flip, coin flip, your opponent is going to have a bad time regardless. So we might see this for Shivering Breath, maybe Deep Frozen. I think it might see some play, but we'll see exactly how much. Okay, the next thing to look at is I thought this Abomasnow, but no, I cannot see that working out too well. We have this Haunter with Gothic Fear. When you play this Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon, both active Pokemon are now confused. And Poison Ring, your opponent's active Pokemon is now poison. The defending Pokemon can't retreat during your opponent's next turn. This is pretty good because unlike the video games, sometimes in the trading card game, special conditions can stack. The ones that can stack are poison and burn, and then one of the status conditions that result in you rotating your card. Confusion and paralysis and sleep. One of those can be in play at the same time as both both poison and burn. So if you were to get this thing into play and use its ability is activated whenever it goes into play. You don't have a choice in the matter. So that puts your opponent's active Pokemon, makes it confused, and then Poison Ring is now poison as well. That combination could be pretty deadly. Due to all these different things that are going to be resulting in status conditions, I think the odds are actually quite likely that we'll see maybe 2 or 3 switch and escape ropes in most decks from now on, but we'll see. Not to mention things like AZ and Super Scoop Up, things that can easily get you out of this. But just know that this Haunter does exist, and it could be pretty intimidating for people who aren't expecting it. The next thing, wow, this is Gengar. I thought it was another Haunter. This Gengar has Unlucky Fog. I'm sorry, my nose is itching really bad. Must be the lights. Unlucky Fog. Your opponent's active Pokemon is now poison. Place 1 damage counter on each of your opponent's benched Pokemon. And then Creep Show. If your opponent's active Pokemon has 3 or more damage counters on it, the Pokemon is knocked out. If you were somehow able to get a Gengar into play and use Creepy Show, not Creepy Show, if you were to use Unlucky Fog, poison your opponent's active Pokemon, it gets 2 damage counters on it. And then place 1 each on each of your opponent's benched Pokemon. If you can get 2 Unlucky Fogs off, then you'll be able to Creep Show any of their Pokemon, instantly knock it out. And then placing, Creep Show just looks awesome. Okay, being able to knock out anything just because it has 30 damage on it, that's incredibly huge. Will it see play? It's a Stage 2. Stage 2s just always have problems. You could rare candy into it, but you'd need to put the damage counters out there anyway, and then make sure that one of the Pokemon with 3 damage counters on it is active when you get your Gengar into play. This thing is also weak to Dark, so it's going to suffer against things like Yveltal, but it has potential, and it does exist, just so you guys remember. And we have this, opposite it, this Magnezone with Magnetic Circuit. As long as you like during your turn, as often as you like during your turn, not as long, you may attach lightning energy from your hand to one of your Pokemon. Now, this is basically identical to Blastoise's Deluge ability from Boundaries Crossed that won the Pokemon World Championships. Except here, it works for lightning energy instead of water energy. If you need a electric energy, lightning energy accelerator, Magnezone is your go-to Pokemon. Thunder Blast has 100 discard energy attached to this Pokemon. What you want this thing for is Magnetic Circuit, and you only need 1 in play at a time because you can use the ability as often as you like during your turn. So this Magnezone is probably going to be huge. Be on the lookout for it. We have our first Mewtwo EX. There are a total of 10 Mewtwo cards in this set. That is so absurd. So we have this Mewtwo EX. Each of the Mewtwo's does something different, so I'm just going to have to go through them one by one. For some reason, this has the Mega Evolution. This one has Mega Evolution fine print. That's another error, Bulbapedia, sorry. It has Photon Wave that does 30, and during your opponent's next turn, any damage done to this Pokemon is reduced by 30, which is pretty good. It's basically a big Assault Vest or whatever. And then we have Cyburn, which does 120. This Mewtwo itself is not that good. We'll get to other ones that are potentially much better, but this is the first one that popped up, so I needed to look at it. And now we have this Raikou from Breakthrough with the Shining Body ability. If there are any electric Pokemon energy attached to this Pokemon, Any damage done to this Pokemon by attacks is reduced by 20. It doesn't stack, so if you have 2 electric energy on it, it still only blocks 20 damage, not 40. It'd be awesome if it did, because then you could just use Magnezone to put like 30 energy on this, make sure it can never get knocked out. But alas, that's not the case. It only reduces it by 20 altogether. Thunder Lance does 50, and it does 20 more for each electric energy attached to this Pokemon. Now this is Keldeo EX and Blastoise all over again. We have the exact same ability, we have the exact same attack. This ability is different. It doesn't rush in, and it's not EX, so it has a little less HP. That is still pretty awesome, though. The big downside is it's weak to fighting, and fighting Pokemon are still incredibly huge in this format. We had a whole set dedicated to fighting Pokemon. So just know that this synergy exists, and people might want to exploit it, so be on the lookout. The Shining Body ability I don't think is too big. The Thunder Lance thing, especially when paired with Magnezone, that's going to be big. Before we get to this Mega Mewtwo, I want to actually look at this Mewtwo EX over here. Burst Ball does 30, and then 30 times the number of Psychic Energy attached to this Pokemon. So if you have 1 on there, it does 30. If you have 2 on there, it does 60, etc. So you can just stack this Psychic Pokemon, unlike Raikou, and deal more and more damage depending on how many energy are on Mewtwo. This is much better than the other Mewtwo up there. So, and then we have Juxtapose. Switch the number of damage counters on this Pokemon with the number of damage counters on your opponent's active Pokemon. So let's say you knock out something with Burst Ball and you have no damage on you. Then your opponent brings up a Pokemon and then deals 160 to you, not enough to knock you out, but enough to knock them out. Just use Juxtapose, knock them out, and clean yourself right up. That would be pretty big. I don't think we'll ever get into a situation where that would happen. We're going to see something incredibly similar to the Mewtwo of Next Destinies. We're going to see a lot of Mewtwo wars. Except here it'll be with Burst Ball instead of X-Ball. Because one Burst Ball with 1 energy already deals 60 to Mewtwo because of Psychic Weakness. If you get 2 on there, that's 120. If you manage to get 2 and then if you manage to get 3, your opponent's Mewtwo is knocked out. The big difference is that wasn't colorless, and it needs to actually be Psychic Energy for this, but there will be ways to make that work. So, of the 2 regular Mewtwo EX, this one is definitely the better one. And now we get to the Mega Mewtwo EXs. Oh yeah, okay, yeah. The Mega Evolution fine print needs to be on this one. Honest mistake. Anyway, we have this Mega Mewtwo EX, which is the X version, and it has Vanishing Strike. It does 150, but here's the thing. It requires a Psychic, a colorless, and 2 fighting, because Mewtwo in the games is part fighting. So you're going to need to mix up your energies here. And then if there's a Stadium card in play, it does 50 more damage, and this attack's damage isn't affected by resistance or any other effects on the defending Pokemon. So let's say they are this Raikou that has the ability Shining Body. Well, now the attack goes straight through it, and it does 50 more damage. So you're dealing 120 plus whatever you have for Muscle Band, plus weakness, and then circumventing any other effects on that Pokemon. So this Mewtwo is pretty powerful. Getting it set up might be a problem, but people will make it work if it's good, and it is good. Now we have the Mega Mewtwo Y, personally my favorite Mega Evolution. And Mega Mewtwo EX over here has Psychic Infinity. It does 10 and then 30 more damage for each energy attached to both active Pokemon, and this attack is not affected by resistance, or is not affected by weakness. So of the 2, this Mewtwo is definitely better, but this one might be a little easier to set up, if for any other reason, because it requires 2 colorless energy. Now, it does 30 more damage for each energy attached to both active Pokemon. That means that it's doing 10, and then it's already doing an extra 70. It's already doing an extra 60 because of the 2 energy on Mewtwo. Now you're saying, well, why would it do that? Why not just make it this and then plus that for however many extra energy on it? Well, it's just the way it is, okay? Plus, if you had something like a Mew with, let's say an expanded, a Mew EX uses Versatile to use Psychic Infinity, and then also has a Dimension Valley in play to reduce the attack cost by 1. Well, now that Mew is only dealing 40 instead of 70. Just the way it works out. So, Psychic Affinity does 10. Well, it basically does 70 plus however extra energy are on you and your opponent. It can deal a lot of damage, but it doesn't factor in weakness, which would be really big in Mewtwo Wars. This Mewtwo deals basically 150. Then if there's a stadium in play, it deals 200 plus not even looking at resistance or effects, plus weakness. But it's harder to set up because it has a mixed energy. So they're both pretty good, but of the two, I'd say this one is the one that people will try and play more. We'll see. Trust me, I love being wrong. Excuse me. So the next thing to look at is this Mismagius with the Twisted Chant ability. When you play this Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon, your opponent shuffles his or her hand into his or her deck. Then your opponent draws a number of cards equal to the number of his or her remaining prize cards. So if you're behind in the game, you have 6 prizes, your opponent has 1, just evolve into Mismagius, and voila. Your opponent shuffles her hand into their deck and only gets 1 card. I don't think this will see too much play, especially since Curse Deeply only does 60, makes your opponent's active Pokemon confused, but we'll see how it works. The Twisted Chant ability is still pretty cool in my opinion. We did not get a Gardevoir on this set, which I'm a little upset about. Oh well. We have this Cresselia, the first normal Cresselia since I think Great Encounters, the 4th Diamond and Pearl set. We had Cresselia EX, we had Cresselia Level X, but yeah. Anyway, we have My Way ability, and if there's a stadium card in play, this Pokemon's retreat cost is 0. Moonlight Gain does 70, heals 20. So it's not the best, but its ability is there, and then that's pretty cool. We have this Meloetta, which has Excel Spin. Attach 2 fighting energy from your discard pile to this Pokemon, then switch this Pokemon with one of your bench Pokemon. This is a great way for energy acceleration, but you do lose your turn. Then Prima Ronda does 60, and if this Pokemon has any psychic energy attached to it, it does 50 more. And since a lot of things are weak to fighting, if you get a psychic energy on this, then you're dealing 110 times 2, 220, knocks out most everything except a few EXs. Not many. So this thing has a lot of potential to get a quick setup, and we'll see if it works at all. This would pair really well with the Mega Mewtwo up there, the X version, since they both rely on fighting and psychic, but we'll see. If someone were to ask me what to pair that Mewtwo with, I would say this Meloetta. They work really well together. Let's see. This Cacturne here has Derail. It does 30 and discard a special energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. I've already mentioned how good disrupting your opponent's energy is. And then Pin Missile does 40, and then flip 3 coins. It's 40 times number of heads. Max of 120, but the Derail is there. Let's see, this Marowak has a pretty interesting attack. The first one, Crack Shot, isn't that good, deals 30 to one of your opponent's Pokemon. It could be active, could be bench. Not bad, but not good. And Bone Windmill does 60. And if your opponent's active Pokemon is an EX, switch that Pokemon with one of his, switch that Pokemon with one of your opponent's bench Pokemon, with one of his or her bench Pokemon. So, this is a really good way to disrupt your opponent. If they have a fully powered up EX, and they're attacking with that, but then they have something on the bench that has a 3 retreat cost, you can just attack them, deal damage, send it to the bench, bring up something else, and just have a good time with them. On top of that, Marowak has its own Break evolution. It ups its HP to 140 instead of 100, and it adds on the attack Bone Revenge. It does 20, and then 40 more for each prize your opponent has taken. If your opponent's taken 3 prizes, this does 140. If your opponent's taken 4 prizes, this does 180, which knocks out most things that aren't Mega or Break. If your opponent has taken 5 prizes, then you are knocking out everything, except for like 1 or 2 kinds of Megas. So that's pretty darn good. The only downside is, of course, you still lose your turn from Break evolving, but it's still pretty cool. My throat is really going out. I forgot to get water. Okay, we have the Zoroark here with the best artwork in a while that I mean, I love Zoroark already, but I love this art of it. Just look at this. Or is it on this side? Yeah, just look at this. Yeah. Okay. So I just love that art, and it has the ability Impersonate. You really messed it by not giving it Illusion. You hear me, Pokemon? I just blind myself by looking at my lights. Impersonate. Once during your turn, if this Pokemon's on your bench, you may switch this Pokemon with your active Pokemon. So it's basically Rush In. Actually, that's exactly what it is. It's Rush In. And then Mind Jack does 10, and then 30 more damage for each of your opponent's bench Pokemon. So it does 10. If your opponent has 5 Pokemon on the bench, it does 160 with Muscle Band, Knockout. And it's a free, you get to promote it for free. And then it also has its own Break evolution, which is really, really pretty. And it has Foul Play. Choose one of the defending Pokemon's attacks and use it as this attack. 1 Darkness Energy. You don't need the attack cost for that Pokemon's attacks. You're able to take something with a... if there was hypothetically a Pokemon with 10 energy needed to attack, all of a sudden the Zoroark can use it with just 1 energy. It's pretty good. Let's see. This Mamoswine is thick fat. Any damage done to this Pokemon by your opponent's fire or water Pokemon is reduced by 30. And then Primeval Rumble does 80, and if you have a Stadium in play, it does 40 more. If your opponent has a Stadium in play, heal 40 from this Pokemon. So it can't do both. If it's your Stadium, you deal 40 more. If it's your opponent's Stadium, you heal 40. But the thick fat is there, and I think that's okay. Oh, we have this Gallade. Okay, that would explain why there's no Gardevoir in this set, because we needed to have Gallade. With Premonition, once during your turn, you may look at the top 5 cards in your deck and put them back on top of your deck in any order. This Pokemon does not need to be active to make this work. That could be pretty good. We had a Lunatone with Premonition. I think that was the name of it. From, oh man, it might have been Plasma Storm. But it only let you look at the top 2 cards of your deck. This lets you look at the top 5, which is pretty good. And then Sensing Blade does 60, and if you played a supporter during your turn, this attack does 70 more. So most people play a supporter every single turn of the game when they're able to. Basically, you're dealing 130 for only 2 energy. Not bad. Stage 2, same problem, but still, that's pretty good. My throat is really killing me. Okay, we have this Yveltal, that's higher up, with Fright Night ability. As long as this Pokemon is your active Pokemon, both players' Pokemon tool cards have no effect. Things like Muscle Band or Hard Charm or things like that suddenly don't work at all because Fright Night just gets rid of it. And then Jet Black Spear does 60, and it does 60 damage to one of your opponent's benched Pokemon EX. This could be really good, especially since the Yveltal deck from the XY base set is still there. This could be a nice one-of tech in that. Let's see, we have this Florges over here with Relaxing Scent. Your Pokemon's attacks cost 1 fairy energy less. Not bad. And this does stack. So if you have 3 of these on your bench, your Gardevoir can attack for free. That's basically what I'm saying. And then Wonder Shine does 70, and your opponent's active Pokemon is now confused. But the Relaxing Scent is what most people are going to care about. We also have a Florges Break. It has a new ability. Flower Breeze. Once during your turn, you may heal 30 damage and remove 1 special condition from your active Pokemon. This is not bad, especially since you compare this with the Florges regular. You still lose a turn by evolving. Oh, you don't lose a turn, but you still need to take a turn to evolve. But you can still stack multiple Florges on your bench and multiple Florges Break. Suddenly, you got maybe 3 Florges Break on your bench. You're going to be doing 3 fairy energy less. I can see Fairy Dex making a huge comeback because of this. It basically gives you free attack for most things, and at least reduced attack for the most part. You get Relaxing Scent and Flower Breeze all in the same turn. And the Flower Breeze stacks as well, so you can heal 30, remove a special condition. Let's say you're affected by those 3 special conditions, like I said earlier. 3 Florges Break on your bench, all of a sudden you're getting rid of 90 damage and healing all those special conditions all at once. That could be pretty good. We'll see how this works. I can definitely see this working really well with the things from Primal Clash. Yes, I remember the name of it. Thanks to everyone who Ray wrote in the comments. Primal Clash. had Gardevoir and a ton of fairy Pokemon and things like Aromatisse, I can definitely see them benefiting a lot from these two cards here. I can't believe I forgot Primal Clash, and I call myself a Pokemon fan. We have Xerneas. Rainbow Force does 10, and 30 more for each different type of Pokemon on your bench. Unless you're running a deck with like 6 different types, then you're not going to be using Rainbow Force that much. Power Creation does 80, and this Pokemon heal damage this turn does 80 more. So you can pair this with the Florges Break, heal some damage, deal 160 plus a Muscle Band, but unfortunately has 120 HP, which means it's relatively easy to knock out. I can't see Xerneas seeing too much play, but maybe a little bit. Maybe a one of Tech in a Fairy deck. That's about what I think. Okay, coming towards the end here. This is pretty cool. This Aromatisse has Heavy Perfume. Your opponent's active Pokemon is now confused. Put 6 damage counters on that Pokemon instead of 3 when that Pokemon is damaged for being confused. Normally, when you're confused, when you attack, you flip a coin, and if tails, you deal 30 to yourself, and your turn ends. With Heavy Perfume, now if you flip tails, you do 60. You put 6 damage counters on you, which is really big. And then Hug does 30, your opponent can't retreat during the next turn. It's pretty cool. Don't think it'll see too much play, but it is there, and it's pretty cool. We have this Haxorus with Dragon Dance. Actually, this has 3 attacks. We're seeing that a little more often now. Dragon Dance, during your next turn, any attacks by this Pokemon do 100 more damage. The effect remains in play as long as this Pokemon is your active Pokemon. So if your opponent Lysanders out something else, the effect is gone. You wasted a turn. But if they don't, Sharp Fang does 160, Dragon Pulse does 230, discard top 3 cards of your deck. Not too good, but still, Sharp Fang, it deals 160 for 1 energy. Stage 2, same problem, but still, we're seeing a lot of pretty good Stage 2s. And that is pretty awesome. Get to scroll down quite a bit here. This Dodrio has Retreat 8 as long as this Pokemon's on your bench. Your active Pokemon's Retreat cost is double colorless less. Now, I don't know if this stacks or not, but at the same time, there's not many decks that people play that rely on Pokemon with more than 2 retreats, so that's still pretty good. And then Fury Attack does 40, and then flip 3 coins. This attack does 40 times the number of heads. So it does 120 tops. But the Retreat Aid is pretty cool. I can see it being used at some point. Let's see. We have this... We have the Smeargle with Recoat. Once during your turn before you attack, you may switch 1 basic energy to your active Pokemon with a different type of basic energy in your discard pile. Could work good with things like that Mewtwo and Meloetta up there. We'll see. And then we have the Staraptor Cyclone Slash to 70, and before doing damage, your opponent switches their active Pokemon with one of his or her bench Pokemon. They have to choose, but still, that's pretty good that they're forced into a situation where they have to switch it up. Then Brave Bird, 120, deal 20 to yourself. Stage 2, same problem. Now we get to the items. The Spirit Links, you all know what they do. This is pretty cool, though. The Mewtwo Spirit Link, let's see if I can get a better picture of this. And the answer is nope, but I can zoom in. The Mewtwo Spirit Link actually has both Mega Mewtwo X and Y on it, which is pretty awesome. You guys know what the Spirit Links do. Floatstone got reprinted. You guys know what it does. The Pokemon has no retreat. Assault Vest, any damage done to this Pokemon by attacks of your opponent's Pokemon with any special energy attached to it is reduced by 40. So if your opponent has, say, a strong energy, it's going to negate that and then reduce it by another 20. That's pretty fun. Heavy Ball got reprinted. Anything with a retreat cost of 3 or more, you search your deck, get it, put it in your hand. So maybe I was wrong. Maybe now that Dodrio will see a little bit of play because people will be using more heavy hitters. The main reason they haven't so far is because Heavy Ball has been rotated out. Now it's back. A lot of cards that people didn't want back are back. Or maybe people did want this back. I can't really say for everyone. We have a few supporters here, including Giovanni's Plan for some reason. I think this is more evidence that we're going to be seeing a Red and Blue remake next year. Giovanni's Plan. This is a very unique supporter because you get to choose one of 2 effects to use when using this card. Those 2 effects that you get to choose from are 1, either draw cards until you have 5 in your hand, or 2, your opponent's your Pokemon's attacks do 20 more damage to the opponent's active Pokemon. So it basically works either as a muscle band or as that, what was it? That one Pokemon up there that gave you 5 cards. So either or, as a supporter, that's pretty cool. We have this Bridget. Search your deck for either a basic Pokemon EX or 3 basic Pokemon not EX and place them onto your bench. Shuffle your deck afterward. The thing is, they go straight onto your bench, so you can't use this to get a Hoopa and then use the Hoopa to get 3 more Pokemon. No, you need to put them straight onto your bench. That's a big downside, but I can see tons of people really using Bridget. It's free search out for things that you might need. We have another new unique stadium here, Parallel City. The text says it all. This card may be placed either way when played. The player on this side of the card, the blue side, can only have 3 Pokemon in his or her bench, and on the red side, the attacks of fire, grass, and water Pokemon on this player's side do 20 less. So it's actually detrimental to both players. It's not overpowered to the point where, oh yay, I'm reducing your bench size and dealing more damage. No, you have to choose very carefully, and I can see people actually playing this just to give their opponent less bench space, even if they're doing less damage. I mean, heck, if you're not using grass or fire or water, then it doesn't matter anyway. In any case, it's a very beautiful city. It's a very beautiful art of Parallel City. We have a reprint of Rainbow Energy. Don't know if we'll see that in English, but it's likely. We have this new special fire energy called Burning Energy. Can only be attached to fire Pokemon. If this card is discarded by an effect of an attack from the fire Pokemon this card is attached to, reattach it to that Pokemon. So that thing like Mega Houndoom, or was it regular Houndoom? Yeah, it was Mega Houndoom. You may discard all fire energy attached to this Pokemon if you do blah, 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 blah. So if you have 2 burning energy on that, then all of a sudden you don't actually discard those burning energy. And it's pretty obvious that this was created with Mega Houndoom in mind. They put burning energy on here twice. Then we get awesome looks at the beautiful full arts. You can go and check these for yourself on PokeBeach or Bulbapedia. And I'll just end with a picture of... Oh, no, I need to show these off. We, come on. What's going on? My stupid internet. Okay, I need to show what the 2 secret rares are going to be in English. It's going to be reprints of the Mewtwo's from the set with the same attacks and everything, but there's going to be, in the background, various Pokemon from the set. We have the Zoroark and the Haxorus and the Meloetta on this Mewtwo, and we have the Magnezone, the Cresselia, and the Chestnut on this Mewtwo in the background. And these will be secret rares in English. We no longer have secret rare trainers, at least not for this set. We have these secret rare reprints of full arts of EXs within the set with other Pokemon from the set in the background, which is pretty cool. And then I'm just going to end with a shot of my favorite card from the set, this Mega Mewtwo Y full art. So if there's anything you thought I missed, please mention it in the comments. I think I was pretty thorough here. I hope you all enjoyed. And if you made it to the very end of the video, put hashtag Psychic Infinity, just as it says right there. Just spell it as you see it in the comments so I know that you made it all the way to the end. This is the preview of Breakthrough. The set releases in English on November 4, and you'll be able to start playing it in competitive play on November 25. Thanks everyone for watching, and stay tuned for more.